Hello, everybody. Really excited to have everyone. Let everybody get comfortable here. I know you're just getting into the webinar room, and welcome to our new platform. We have decided to shift over to our webinar platform just to create a little bit more features and engagement for all of you as you join us here. I know you come in about every month to 2 months to spend some time with us, and wanted to make sure that we kept up with the technology and where things are going. So I hope you enjoy the new platform in terms of how we're going to operate. You are joining us for our CEO webinar, and we are talking about how to set up 2020 for explosive growth. Now, as normal, I'm going to walk through just a couple quick expectations, and then we're going to dive into our content, and then we'll leave you with some options of how to get additional resources. So quickly, this webinar is actually sponsored by Resourcing Edge. If you have HR needs or a desire to work with a PEO firm, I encourage you to learn more about Resourcing Edge. Go check them out online. They're perfect for small business owners. Thanks, Resourcing Edge, for helping us bring this content today to our great members. My name is Casey Clark. I am the CEO of Cultivate Advisors. I've probably met majority of you. Maybe I just met you at our conference. But nonetheless, if I haven't met you, I'm the fearless leader here in charge of driving Cultivate, ensuring we add a ton of value for our entire community. So with that, I want to make sure that you're all taking advantage of the community. So a quick shout out to everybody who came to Catapult. Thank you. We hope you had as much fun as we did. We've heard a lot of really great feedback from the surveys. Thanks for everybody that's been giving us that feedback. We also got some really great ideas from everybody's feedback. So just wanted to make sure I gave the community a quick shout out and a thank you for attending and helping make this community become what it has become. If you don't know, you've got Cultivate Your Success, our quarterly event that's coming up on November 13th. If you work with your advisor in person, there's a really good chance that we have an in-person quarterly event. If you work with your advisor virtually, you're probably joining our virtual event. So it's a 3 to 4 hour workshop. It's getting into the details, getting a chance to network and meet a bunch of different local business owners to help move your business forward. The topic for Cultivate Your Success coming up in November 13th is actually an extension from this webinar. It's going to continue to talk about the business planning side of getting 2020 ready. There might be a slight summary of some of the content I cover today, but there won't necessarily be any overlapping content. So I strongly encourage you to join us on November 13th in your region. And I'll give you some information at the end of the webinar of where you can go sign up for that if it'll be your first time signing up for it within the community. Quick announcement. We have heard a ton of people asking us to create a way where all the great business owners within the Cultivate community can start to have an ongoing conversation. We saw that with the app we had for Catapult at our annual conference. I've never seen so many people have so many messages going backwards and forwards. That was really, really cool. We decided to go create a private Facebook group that we are now managing. So more details to come. We'll be launching that in November. Really excited. Keep an eye on that in the next couple of weeks to be able to make sure you can join. And again, you do have to be an active client of Cultivate in order to have access to it. And last but not least, just remember the Learning Center. We have some really great content on there. If you're curious, I'm going to actually talk about some of the items I refer to today at the end of today's webinar, just to point you in the right direction of some resources, because I know there is an absolute ton. So I'll try to navigate you what you can go check out and how to take the learning from today to the next level. So let's dive in. I've obviously got some experience here in terms of growing and scaling businesses, but I want to tell you what I've really struggled with sometimes when it comes to getting ready for the next year. I've had those years, right, where 2019, we're getting ready for 2020. I've personally had those years where I've just been unbelievably accountable. I know what the goals are. I know what the metrics are. I know what I need to achieve. It's so clear and defined of what needs to happen. But I also know those moments where I have not had that. I have not had that clarity. I haven't held myself accountable. And I'm sure as business owners here on the call, a lot of you can relate to this. There's been those years where you're in that groove. Well, we want to make sure 2020 is your banner year. We want to make sure that 2020 is the year that you get into the groove and you really have explosive growth for not only the business, but yourself. I've experienced cultures, if you're leading through a larger team, I've had teams that have been just unstoppable, a really great performance culture. I've also had the decaying culture. There's these different things that you create that allow yourself to create these situations. And it really starts with a mindset and it starts with an approach to getting into the next year. And that's really what I want to help, is help you get in touch with those goals and those initiatives, right? That's what we want to help you get to as you move into 2020. And I'll give you a little bit more detail of how we're going to do that. Now, this content I'm going to walk you through today, keep in mind, I'm going to talk about it from all 5 stages. Again, the hustler is the solopreneur, the experimenter, you've just hired your first few employees, the visionary, quite a few more employees, you've identified the destination of where you're going, the systemizer, you're starting to build in that leadership team and you're becoming the interim department lead in different areas as you grow and scale. And then the influencers, you have a leadership team built and you're leading through that leadership team. We all experience these stages as we navigate and grow the business. So I have content that'll be great here today for some of the earlier stages, and I have content that are also built for some of the later stages. Few expectations so we can all have a great experience. I can already see a bunch of you have figured out how to make the chat work. So if you haven't already, just know that this is going to be a chatting group. We want you sharing best practices. We want you throwing questions out to each other. Transparently, a little hard sometimes for me to be able to manage the chat and read all the great comments while I'm going. So don't worry if for some reason, I don't call out your exact question. Know that other advisors are on the line. They're going to be jumping in and answering, as well as if you have an answer for someone, jump on there. This should be a great experience for you. We will have some polls that we announce as well. That gives me an idea of where people are at so I can focus and tailor our content today. And then last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, I'll show you where you can get some of these resource options and how you can actually get the recording of this webinar after if there's something you want to come back to. All right, so I've got to talk about graduated learning. As I walk through this content, I want you to keep in mind that my goal is for you to jump 1 to 2 stairs and your ability to plan and set yourself up for 2020. That is the goal today. So don't come in thinking that you're at the beginning of the staircase and you've got to get all the way to the top. If you're also are really good at this kind of stuff, I'm sure some of you on the line are, again, it's about finding those 1 or 2 items that you can tweak or think about a little differently that'll get you that slight lift next year. And what I'm going to cover is not rocket science. So keep that in mind. I'm going to give you simple, clear systems and processes you can implement. So if you ever find yourself going, well, yeah, I already knew this. Great. That's not your learning item, but maybe it is for somebody else. All right, I've set enough expectations. Let's get into our topic. So I'm going to be talking about the mindset that I believe all owners should have to get ready for 2020. I'm going to talk about some of the massive issues that I see people have when it comes to setting good goals. We're then going to talk about leading indicators. Now, through goal setting and lead indicators, there's going to be some workshop time where I'm actually going to give you an option and some quiet time to work through some of these things just to get the surface and the macro set. As you go deeper, when you join our group here November 13th, you're going to get into a lot more of the micros of the planning. And then at the end, I just want to leave you with 5 or 6 quick skill hacks that I find personally help me as I prepare Q4 to get ready for the new year. All right, let's get in. So I want to just do a quick chat in here. What does growth mean for you in 2020? Go ahead and jump in the chat and just share with the group. What is growth going to mean for you? It can mean so many different things depending on where we're at in our business or what we're trying to personally work on. You can also include in the chat if there's anything specific you're hoping to gain from this webinar. There might be something really top of mind, and I'm going to just take a moment and let us read these chats as they start to come in. Awesome, great. So somebody just shared here they want to increase their revenue to justify hiring their next few full-time employees. That's great. What else does growth mean to you? And I know how many people we have on the call, so we should have a bunch of people starting to chime in here. Growth for the starting to scale the business. Okay, so a lot of staffing up here, which is great. Awesome, Karen. Using the stages, that's great. Thank you. A lot of full-timers. Increased top revenue is a theme here. Launching your first franchise, that's exciting. Okay. I can see a lot of you still haven't posted yet, so just so you know, I know who you are. But nonetheless, these are great. This gives me a really good understanding here of what's going to be important to you and how you're going to define the growth to get to that next level. Well, let's take this a little bit further. Let's talk about the mindset and get us in the right place before we can then move into actually the tactical work of planning. I'm going to keep us engaged here. I want to launch a poll here. How much do you want your business to grow in 2020? I'm going to use top line at this point. So just, are you not trying to grow? Do you need the top line to grow 5 to 15, 20 to 35, 40 to 55%, or 60% year over year? We've got quite a few answers rolling in here. I'm going to give everybody just another few minutes here to go ahead and select your answer. Interesting. And hey, if you're not trying to grow in top line revenue because you're growing something else, that's okay. I see 1 or 2 folks that have selected that. Nothing wrong with that. All right, I think we've got quite a few folks here that have gone ahead and submitted. Let's go ahead and stop that poll and we can share that. So it looks like at a high level, the 20 to 35% is where majority of people are trying to grow, but we have people kind of spread throughout in terms of where they want to be at. What I can kind of tell though is majority are looking to grow by 20% or more. Sounds like our advisors have their hands full here the rest of this year and into next year, no problem. So this gives us a really good indication of what to expect here for growth. So if you want explosive growth, which makes sense if you're joining this webinar, you've come to the right place, but it may not be what you think it is. It may not actually be what it takes to get there, and your mindset has a lot to do with that. And I love this image because some people, they love growth. They desire the growth. If they're not growing, they think, well, what's the point? And that can be a great mindset to have. But think about for a moment, what would be the problem with that mindset? Are you always taking too much risk? Are you pushing too early? Are you not prepared and built properly to take on the growth? So you have to think, are you on the left side of this? And growth is, I'm just going to charge it no matter what walls I have to go through? Because you're going to want to approach growth maybe a little differently. If you look at the other side of it, now we've got the person who's a little more conservative, a little more scared. They're going to be a bit more overly cautious as it pertains to growth. And again, the goal is to meet somewhere in the middle, right? Neither of these are wrong. It's not about that. It's just understanding what side might you be on. And can you find more of a balanced mindset to take calculated risks, and can you be excited about the growth and looking forward to it, but also being conscious of when to hold and when to stay steady to get the opportunity for growth. And again, I'm speaking very high level, but it's just, I want you to think for a moment, what side are you on? And what do you need to shift just a little bit that might be better for you to put yourself in the right balanced mindset? The other area, and you've probably seen this slide, I love to use it because it's just our world, right? We all experience this every day, every week, every month. We all go through this massive up and down curve. When you plan and when you think about what you want to set up for yourself in 2020, it's really important that you make those decisions when you're at a level place. For me personally, when I usually do what's called a planning week. I actually almost take it off in the form of vacation. I disappear from my office. I lock myself in my office. I don't let people come in. I give myself space for a couple days or for a week to really critically think about the future of the business. And where does this need to go? Why do I need to get it there? And I do that so I don't feel the emotions. I stay off my email. I stay off my voicemail. I don't want anything to trigger me and to not put me in a really sound place. So I want you to think about when's the best time for you to work on planning where you're not in the curve, and respect that as you go through this. Because if you don't, you'll find yourself being overly conservative or overly optimistic as you approach the planning. Now, we all know that as success, right, it looks really good to everyone else, but we all know down below what's actually happening. We know how hard we're working, the discipline it takes to grow by 20% or more. That is not an easy task. That's a very, very difficult task. If it was so easy, everybody would do it. So then you have to ask yourself this question when it comes down to mindset. Okay, I want this epic, explosive growth, but how do I do it in a simple way? And this is where I see most people overcomplicate how to grow the business. We've obviously been fortunate. We have grown our business literally by triple-digit percentages year over year, multiple years in a row. And we continue to see unbelievable growth, but it's not because we're trying to make things very complicated or really trying to do something different every time. We make sure we try to stay as simple as possible. And I'm going to give you some ways to think about this with your mindset of how do you set yourself up for simple growth, not complicated growth, because complicated growth, all that does is come with more of your time or more risk. It's not the right type of healthy or organic growth. And don't get me wrong, sometimes growing is hard and complex, but our goal is to try to simplify it. That's what I want you to shift your paradigm or shift your mindset to. So we have this methodology that I want to pull forward, and you may or may not have seen this from your advisor. Different advisors use it at different times when they work with their clients. But we have this methodology of a propeller. Obviously, our tagline is propelling businesses. And when it comes to a propeller, this is how we break down and take a high-level view of a business. And I thought I would pull this forward today to give you some insider knowledge of what our advisors might be doing in the back of their heads. See, the propeller is set up to where the financials is the engine. This is what actually drives the propeller, which allows your plane to take flight, which encases your business for growth. The financials are the engine. If the financials are not healthy and cash flow is not clear, the other blades do not matter within this propeller. You don't need to go plan out the other propeller blades yet. You need to focus on that engine. That's the first step of the mindset. The second step is then to realize that the industry, we don't work on industry, but for you, you need to know your industry and you need to have clarity of what is it that you're going to tweak or shift in 2020 around your industry. And then we move into the hats, right? You've seen our hats: marketing, sales, recruiting, leadership, and productivity. Almost everything will flow underneath those hats. So financials is what connects it all. But at the end of the day, you need to decide what are the 2 or 3 blades you're going to focus on that's going to get you that growth. Now, I saw some people when they checked in with the webinar talking about sales and marketing. I saw other people really focused on the recruiting. I saw other people saying sales so you could recruit. But what is the blade or 2 that you're going to focus on the most? And this is just a really simple methodology to help you just look at the business. And a lot of times what advisors and I are doing in our heads is when we're learning about a business, we're just putting a simple 1 to 10 scale on each of these blades and on the financial engine. And it helps us identify what's the shape of that propeller and what do we need to do to make it even and make it spin with the least amount of friction. It's a simple analogy, but it goes a long way. And I was hoping if I pulled that forward, it would allow you to maybe see your business through a different lens as you start the planning process. So most are going to try to grow on this simple aspect. They're going to try to grow by doing more with less. They're going to go, we do $1 million in revenue. I want to do 2 million, and I want to have the least amount of people I have to hire, the least amount of marketing resources deployed. Why? Of course, back to that financial engine. You make more money if you do that. Of course, that's what you want to do. That makes a lot of sense. But what if you actually figured out a way to do more with more? This is a common concept I continue to share with business owners I get to meet with, to go, the way to grow is you have to do more, but you have to create more resources to create that growth. And I want you to let that sink in again as part of your mindset. And I'll take it a step further here. So you get less when you start a new segment or a product or service. That's the cannibalization of your business. You don't need to overcomplicate your business. Maybe if you're in the experimenter stage, you might be playing with a couple segments because you're trying to figure out what exactly are you going to scale. But if you're in the other stages, not necessarily something you're going to need to focus on in terms of creating a new segment, product, or service. That can make a lot of complication unless you're going to go build out another team to help support you with that. Because again, that's when you're trying to do more with less. Maybe you're trying to constantly generate ideas, but you're not connecting it to the end goal. Again, if you don't have the macro or the vision clearly defined, it's very, very difficult to make the right decisions when you're in the moment to pilot and navigate yourself to that end goal. So try not to, in this planning process, just come up with a bunch of new ideas unless it supports you hitting that 1 or 2 simple macro goals. Starting in all in on something versus testing it. If you have a new idea or a new concept, you don't need to build it all the way out to 100% to deploy it. You need to instead launch it early, get some traction, know that it's working, and then continue to evolve it. That makes things simple for your team, especially with a larger team. I know we've got quite a few folks that have that. If you're shifting all the way through to a new model or something, that'll add a lot more complexity and potentially could hold back the growth. You trying to be involved with everything. As you scale now, if you're hustlers, I understand you're still involved with everything. That's expected. But for folks that are not, and you have employees, start to give up autonomy. Focus on how to give up control. Take a little bit more risk if that's something you're struggling with. Don't search for these Hail Mary solutions. Don't keep thinking about how do I throw that ball out so far that that just automatically jumps us by the 20 to 60% growth that I'm looking for. Instead, what we continue to see work is find the 2, 3, or 4 smaller incremental things that'll get you the quickest lift, but therefore you start to do more and more and more, which is what creates that percentage growth. Another one that we see is less win is when it's not tracking return on investment of time. Everybody wants to track investments of purchases. That's an easier one for people to get their head wrapped around, but they never estimate the amount of time. So when you think about what you're going to change for 2020, make sure you also estimate how much time it's going to take from you or your team, and what is the cost associated with that time of creating those shifts or changes in 2020. Please don't forget that, because that's where people get caught up with trying to do more, but they still have the same less amount of resources. And the last one is talking versus doing. Be mindful, this is for our hustlers. If you are finding yourself spending a lot of time talking about it, stop talking, take action. Let's flip this. Let's make sure you understand, how do you create more resources then? Because again, this is trying to get you in that mindset to get you in this planning workshop I'm getting ready to take you through. So one is, you want to spend more time planning, focusing on the attention of your goals. All right, that is crucial. I continue to see owners that do not take thinking time to work on the business. Now, as advisors, we help pull you out of your business and put you with our advisors, and that's part of our process to get you just working on it versus in the trenches. But you yourself need to probably be taking more time outside of that to work on your business. Just a few hours a week can go so far, as long as it's not idea generation and it's problem solving and really trying to understand what's the best simple way to get to the end goal. Database decisions versus emotional. That might be your thing that you need to hear today. Are you making decisions off your gut? Nothing wrong with that, but if they're just emotionally based and they're not grounded as well in data, you may find yourself struggling to pick the right goals or to pick the right areas to focus on. Macro and micro is another big element. You most likely have a preference. Some of you are macro, some of you are micro people. Few of you are ambidextrous when it comes to macro, micro. Few of you can truly think a macro objective and a micro objective quickly. But just write down for a moment, are you better with the macro, big picture goal, or are you better getting in the weeds and having the micro goals? You want to have your advisor help you with the other goal that you're not good at. So that way, when you create this plan, this will help you make sure you're not overstretching your resources as you try to create the growth. Accountability through leading indicators. And this is what we're going to spend a lot of time on as we get into this plan. I'm going to walk you through a very simple way that I can always find leading indicators. Because what you don't want to do is try to hold yourself accountable to the year end. You would need to hold yourself, depending on what stage of the business in, daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly, just depending on what level the business is at and how much sustainability is within that business. Strong support and leadership of your team. Don't just delegate to your team when you come up with these changes that you're getting ready to work through with me and potentially on November 13th. Make sure you're coming in and supporting, sharing the why, and really leading them in pursuit of that simple goal. Again, these are just quick reminders to get us in the right mindset. And then product or service the way you do it now. How do you grow and leverage what you've already built? Everybody wants the shiny red ball. Squirrel. Everybody's got it. Some element. No. Figure out, all of you, I bet majority of you could grow your business right now by 20 to 60% by increasing how much of that same product or service you already currently do. Be wary of a small business issue that we continue to see be the Achilles heel, and that it's always, well, how do we do more? How do we do more? Focus on what you have. Figure out how to grow there first. And a good way I do it is I go, I think I can get organic growth by 20 or 30% of just doing what we're doing. But I'm going to have to increase this, whatever that is, to get the next 20% that I want. How do I change the least amount as possible while creating that growth? And you will find that that allows you to move faster. And then the last one here is just the streamlined systems and process implementation. Continue to build out systems, continue to build out the processes that help keep the guardrails in line. Again, an advisor is a great person to get a lens in. That's where every business really does differ. So before I go into this planning exercise, I feel like I've hopefully got you in the right mindset. I've given you some time to reflect and just get your thoughts in order. I want to ask a quick question because I need to know where people are at in terms of how much planning have you already done. So we're going to go ahead and launch that second poll here. And I just need to know, is the plan in your head and you don't necessarily have anything planned out? Is it 2 to 3 annual goals are set? You generally know what you want to do. Are they set with quarterly and monthly metrics in place, all laid out? And then the furthest one is, do you already actually have it into each department? It's broken down, macro, micro goals. They own it. You've delivered them to your team. So give everybody just a minute here. This is just going to help me get an idea of who's on the webinar today, so I speak to it. Give everybody here just another 10 seconds. All right, so we're just over 70% have taken. That's good for me. Let's go ahead and stop that poll. So from what I can tell, it's nicely mixed, which is great, but it looks like majority, it's in their head. They don't have it planned yet, or they've got their 2 or 3 annual goals are set. They haven't quite, maybe because timing of year, they just haven't got to it yet. Whatever the case may be, this is a good indication. I see we have a few people that have started to break down some of the metrics into the different frequencies. And we've got one person who's really got into their department. So whoever answered that question, congrats, that's amazing that you've gotten to that point at this point of the year. Well, let's take this then to the next level. Let's start thinking through goal setting. And this is where I'm going to get some development for you, but I'm also going to give you some workshop time. I've got to lay a couple ground rules that I have when it comes to goals. And I just want you to understand this, and feel free to copy, rob, and duplicate this methodology of mine. But these are 2 things that have to be happening when it comes to setting the right goals for the business. 1, you need to have a clear vision in place. A vision is the destination where people are following you to, and you need to know what, why you want those things. A vision is not just what it is, it's also the why connected. And you need to be able to share that articulately, because otherwise it's very hard to get others to buy into the macro goal. So before you set your macro goal, please make sure you have that long-term vision in place. Then you want 3 or 5 years mapped out. Way down the road, where are you going? Again, because we want 2020, the goal that you set, we want it to line up and be in pursuit of those 3 to 5 years. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard this before, but although you hear it, it doesn't mean when you get into the time for planning, you're actually doing it, which is why I slow this down so I know you hear this. If you have a team, especially if you have any form of leadership within that team, it is really important that you're not the only one that does the planning. It is crucial that you are slowing down and getting the buy-in of your team and rolling up with your team as you set these goals. Meaning, you're going to have coverage. So let me explain. Let's just use a sales team. It's very easy, but you can do this in every department. If I have a sales team, I'm going to have them set their goals. That way they have some buy-in. I'll give them some expectations of what I need. I will roll them up. Their goals become my goal. It's not a top down. It's a top shares their perspective, down sets, and it goes down to up. And then you create some coverage. The sales goals add up to $1 million. I'm going to set my goal at 800, giving me some coverage over the goals that are set. Please make sure that you are including your team when you set these goals, and that they're not just yours. You'll have a much higher probability and chance. Even if you only have 2 or 3 employees, go have a lunch meeting and tell them what you're thinking about and ask what their perspective would be of what they'd want to accomplish, and tie it in to a simple shared goal. You'll see how fast that'll move. Now, you've probably seen this. This is my second quick piece that I want to give you before we start to set some goals. Make sure it's smart. Make sure it's a specific goal, right? It's not just I want to run a marathon. It's I want to run the Marine Corps marathon. Make sure it's measurable. I want to run the Marine Corps marathon in under 2 hours. pretty crazy considering only one person has done it, but that's what I want to do. That's usually how we feel, right? As entrepreneurs, really optimistic right away. Of course, we'll do it at this level. Let's make sure it's action oriented. Well, I want to train for and run the Marine Corps Marathon in under 2 hours. You know what? I don't know if this is realistic. I want to train and I just want to complete the Marine Corps Marathon. And then time bound. I want to do that before October 30th. Now, as you approach your system here of setting goals, I don't need you to necessarily go through every letter, but just when you've done set the goal, go back through and go, is this specific? Can I measure and know it was hit? Is it action-based? Is it realistic? Has anybody done it before? Do I have data that shows I can do it? And do I know a timeline in which I need to hit it by? These are just the simple ground rules. Again, if you haven't had a lot of experience setting goals, this will get you in the right track. I'm sure most of you have seen something similar to this before. So I'm going to show you an example. Let's actually put it into practice. I like to, on these webinars, use a lemonade stand. I just find it's very simple. Everybody can relate to, no matter the business or industry you're in. I have a revenue goal of a $400,000 business for my lemonade stand. All right, I need to take this macro goal and I need to make it actionable. And I'm going to show you what I mean on how to make it actionable. The actionable goal is actually to sell 106,382 cups. Why is that more important than 400,000? Because 106,382 cups, I can actually share with my company and they will understand it. My team will get it. They know how to go after selling that many cups at our lemonade stand. That is what makes it actionable and allows it to become very shared with the rest of your team. So how did I get this actionable goal? Because if you have, again, I'm just going to focus on a simple top line revenue goal, but you can do this with any goal, all right? No matter what department you're looking at. How I do this is I look at the average transaction. So I just look at, well, I have small, medium, and large sizes, and these are the dollar amounts. So that average is 372. Well, I don't sell, though, the same allocation of all these sizes, so I better run the allocation, and that comes to prove it's actually $3.76. So not too much of a difference. So I took 400,000, I divided it by $3.76, which is what my average by allocation is for my industry, to figure out how many cups I need to sell. That number of cups, I'm going to come back to and speak further on of how to understand leading indicators. But I want you to think for a moment, if you have a top line revenue goal, how do you break that down into 3 very actionable goals that you could share with customers, that you could share with employees, you could share with significant others, and people would quickly be able to understand what it is you're trying to achieve? Because so much of goal setting is not just what the goal is, it's how do you get others to follow you in pursuit of that goal. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take some workshop time. I want you to first grab a piece of paper, grab your computer notes, wherever you need to put it at. And I'm going to ask you here, what is your 2020 revenue goal? Just go ahead and list that down. I just want to work you through this process one time so I know you can do this on your own. Now that you have your 2020 revenue goal, keep working on it if you don't know yet. And again, if I'm not asking you to go do a deep analysis yet, you can always change it, but just for the purpose of learning this process. And now what I want you to do is I want you to drill down one level. I want you to think of what are 3 actionable goals that would actually help you achieve that revenue goal. And they can be anything you want. For me personally, I know how many advisors I have to recruit next year. If I do that, that's an actionable goal to hit my revenue. So what are those 3 things that you have to do? And I'm just going to give everybody a few minutes of silence. Don't worry, I'm still here. I'll check in about every minute so you know you haven't lost us, but I just want to give you some space to think. If you're struggling on the actionable goals, just think about what your average order or average widget is. It's a good way to break it down to the widget. Think about number of people you need, or think about time. Those are 3 really simple ways that you can a lot of times break it down if for some reason it's not coming to you right away. I'm going to still give everybody just another minute here to just slowly write those down. If you already have a couple that you've identified, If you're open, I would love for you to share them in the chat. Not to brag about what you're going to go accomplish and change the numbers if you want, but I would love to just get some examples thrown in the chat of how people view their actionable goals in pursuit of what they're wanting to accomplish. And you don't have to share the revenue numbers that are important to you. We'll keep confidential from that piece. But jump in the chat if you have a few actionable goals that you've identified in terms of processing through this. So again, we're wrapping up our actionable goals because I'm getting ready to move. And I'm sure there's some people here typing to put in a couple of their actionable goals. Just one or two examples would be great. Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. So that's a hiring thing you have to do to be able to maintain the capacity is what I'm assuming. Great, Rodrigo. Thank you. So you have to get at least one more food experience, and you have to hire and grow the team with this many people. Ooh, I like that, Augustine. You're actually putting in, you're starting to talk about leading indicators, so I won't mention that yet. I'll come back to that example when we get there. So Paul, 30% profit margin can be tough though to measure with your group. Just keep that in mind. Maybe your industry's a little different, but maybe think about what is it you have to do to get to that profit margin would actually potentially be the actionable goal. I like the detail here. Increase to 1,440 transactions next year, requiring 15 new salespeople hired next year. Those are some really, really good actionable goals. That's fantastic. These are some great examples. I'm sure some aren't sharing out of comfortability, no problem. But this gives you some good ideas if you might have been struggling with what is the right actionable goal for me to set. As always, talk to your advisor about this. Get clear on what those actionable goals are, especially in your next meeting before you check out November 13th's Cultivate Your Success event. That will help you go so much faster in that planning process. All right, so I'm going to keep us moving here for purposes of time. So I want to move us now into leading indicators. How do we take that macro goal of revenue? We've set the actionable goals. Now, how do we actually lead to it? How do we set ourselves up right now so in 2020, we can keep the focus? Because you just created some very simple actionable goals. Now, unfortunately, what a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is those goals are lost in 30 days. Whirlwind comes at us, we ride the curve. Trust me, I've had it happen to me. I get it. My tip, take those 3 actionable goals before I give you these leading indicators. Get them on the back of your desktop, on your screensaver. Get them on a piece of paper in multiple rooms of your office. Get them front and center. Every meeting you have with your team, remind them of those 3 goals, front and center, and drive everything in pursuit of those actionable goals and have the confidence that they will lead you to achieving that top line revenue or whatever top line goal if you go back and work this exercise yourself. Now we're going to take this back one step further and we're going to move into leading indicators of how do we indicate that those actionable goals will be achieved. And a leading indicator is really simple. It just comes from this concept of when this happens, it indicates that this other thing might happen. That's it. Don't overcomplicate what a leading indicator is. If A takes place, we believe B will happen. And the purpose of this is to get to the word controlled. I'm sure some of you at times feel like you have no control over the success of the business. That's not a great place to be when you want to look for explosive growth. Now, I'm sure some of you are learning or already have figured out how to control the business a bit more. So this might just be more of a different philosophy of how to break down the controlled metrics, which I think you'll still find really helpful. But the controlled metrics is an area that we continue to see that people get wrong. Not out of desire, they just don't understand necessarily the full value. So I want to give you a bit of a process that you can follow when it comes to using controlled metrics in your planning steps that you're going to be taking over the next few months to get ready for 2020. One, when you work with a controlled metric, after we've identified them, I'll give you some examples of that here in a moment, you want to use a planning tool. And it really just depends on the type of goals that you've set. So I'll give you some examples. You want to have, these are the common ones that I will have every year in my business. And I would encourage every owner to have these plans in place before you kick off the year. You're just not giving the business the credit it deserves if you're not slowing down. It doesn't matter what stage of the business you're in, except for if maybe you're a hustler and you don't plan to recruit people next year, you don't need the recruiting plan. But everything else you're generally going to need. And so the cash flow is obviously on the financials, not what's the future cash flow look like if we implement these metrics. What if we miss these metrics? Give yourself the confidence to know already proactively what will be your what ifs depending on what barriers you come upon through your scale of growth. Because if you go try to grow by 20 to 60% next year, but you don't understand how to maneuver cash if you're not making it, you're probably still spending all of that money, but you don't have the other earnings coming in to protect it. You could put yourself in a really bad cash situation. So know that you've run some what if scenarios. Sales plan. Know generally the amount of transactions and activity you need to hit. I know some of you already know this based on your actionable goals. That's fantastic. Recruiting plan. Not just the number of hires, but how many interviews, how many applications do I need? This is where controlled metrics start to get planned out. A marketing lead source plan. What are all the sources we get our leads from? And how many leads do we expect to come from those sources? And what conversion do we expect from each source? That's what makes up a really good marketing lead source plan. Even take it one step further, how much of budget do I need for that source in order to put into my financials and make the whole engine work? And then lastly, a product or service output plan, understanding the capacity of your widget, understanding the capacity of the people you have, and making sure that that all connects to what is needed between cash, more revenue through sales and marketing, enough bodies. If you don't put these things in place and make sure they all connect, you're going to have a hard time really jumping and getting that explosive growth. The people generally who achieve those types of growth numbers have all of these in play. And we're going to go deeper on these when you get to November 13th for our Cultivate Your Success event. After you've got your plan in place, you're then going to pick your simple controlled metrics that you want to lead to. It's impossible to keep coming back to these big, massive plans on all the different areas of your business. So you're going to pick the one or two metrics within those plans that you have the confidence in to say, I bet if I hit that metric, the rest will fall into play. That's the approach, because you need something simple. That's my theme today. You need a simple plan. My business plans are normally a page long by the time I'm done doing all this analysis and working through all the detailed metric plans. I can sum it into one plan of what my 3 actionable goals are, and then what are my 1 or 2 metric goals that I'm tracking per area of the business. And I just drive all year long towards those. Now you want to identify the frequency. How often are you going to review those metrics that you've chosen? For your business, is it weekly? Is it daily? Is it monthly? Most are going to be weekly to monthly based on being in between a hustler all the way up to a visionary. Some systemizers and influencers with larger leadership teams, you might as the owner need to be managing your controlled metrics every quarter. That's how I currently operate, but I'm leading my team to operate weekly or monthly. So just be conscious of the size of business and how far in front of your team and how long it will take to implement activity. That's something you can talk to your advisor on if you need some advice there. So the 4th step, and this is really important, you simply want to manage and run the business through that metric, but you also want to confirm that throughout the year, that metric is leading to the bigger goal. So the way that you do that is you don't change the end annual goal. You're going to keep those controlled, actionable goals in place. But every month or every quarter when you review, go ahead and recut that plan, that simple metric plan. So that way you know what you have to keep shifting or maneuvering to get to that goal. Don't just settle on changing the goal. That's not the way to approach it, because then you'll eventually find yourself lowering down below whatever growth percentage you wanted to aim for. So 4 simple steps. Get these plans in place by the end of the year. Drill down. You work with your advisor to help you pick the specific controlled metrics that you need to have. I can usually manage about 5 to 6 controlled metrics a year is generally what I'm able to lead on. Identify the frequency of when you're going to come back and review them and see that they're in pursuit of the big goal, and make sure you then recut the plan during those frequencies to stay on track. Sometimes it's slight pivots, sometimes it's large pivots. This is a very, very simple, slowed down model. And again, this isn't rocket science, but the amount of people who know and say, yeah, this is possible, but then they're not actually doing it. So put it in your calendar after you finish this plan. Know it's scheduled, so then you follow your calendar to complete it. Let me give you an example of controlled metrics a little further so I know we're on the same page before we move to our workshop here. Again, 400,000 revenue for my lemonade stand. I think you're all aware of that. And again, my actionable goal that I'm trying to work towards is 106,382 cups, 106,000. All right. Well, I'm just going to start to list all the metrics that I think could be good that would be controlled. I could try to look at cups based on the number of months that I'm open. I have a very seasonal business. I have 30, maybe it's number of cups per week. Maybe that's easier for my team to get around. I could look at, actually, we have 260 days a year, so it's 410 days. Maybe it's, I lead, how many cups do we sell a day? I guess I could even look at it an hour. Starting to get a little ridiculous, but I could look at it. All right, now I'm just over the top here. What if I want to sell, I have to sell 1 cup every 1.46 minutes? Give you a hand, I'm probably not going to pick that bottom one, but this gives me the ideas of frequencies and what do I think is going to feel the most controlled in terms of how to sell it. So I chose 260 days a year. So I believe I could create a controlled metric where I track the number of days that we sell over 410 cups a day. I'm going to create a thermometer in the office. I'm going to have my manager updated every day. We're going to do awards based around it. I'm going to lead my entire business around this one metric. And I'm never going to really talk about the 106,000 cups or the 400,000. That one metric is what I'm going to lead on. Easy to understand, hard to actually do and keep yourself focused. But now that I think about it, just to show you how much thought, I think I could actually even change this, because that doesn't necessarily help my marketing and sales push people to my location for the lemonade. So if I actually go one step further, now that I know that I want to look at the daily, I'm going to break this down and say that my average person is purchasing 1.87 cups. That means I need 219 patrons a day. Can I get 219 people? Can I make the register ring 219 times? Okay, that's what I'm leading around. It seems more realistic. Now I can work on my marketing. How do I make sure there's at least 220 people coming into my door every day? All departments are operating off of this controlled metric that we are leading to. Again, simple examples, lemonade stand. You have to do this for your business, obviously, and it's very hard to do it on your own. It's why I have a board of advisors that I go to help work through a lot of these different metrics. It's what you're going to need to do as well when it comes with our advisors if you're having a hard time getting there. But I want to give you just a few minutes to try to put it into action. Just pick one of those actionable goals that you set. Just pick a simple one. And I want you to try to write down what are 1 or 2 leading indicators, and then pick a controlled metric that you think would help you lead to in pursuit of getting that actionable goal. So I'm going to use an example. Chris, you talked about these 1,440 transactions. First thing is break it down into a bunch of different frequencies. Then break it down, if you have different departments, break it down by who's involved in departments. The point of getting to a controlled metric is just to break down whatever that actionable goal is into the smallest amount of widgets as possible, and then pick the one that seems the most realistic to be able to lead from. That's the easiest way to find controlled metrics. So I'm going to give everybody here just a minute or two. Start writing down what you think some options could be for controlled metrics. And again, if you're finding yourself a bit lost as you write these down, what is it that you know you can control? The action you go, we have the ability to control that activity. I could go stand on the street if I had to and bring 220 people into my lemonade stand if that's what I had to do. It's a controllable metric. If you've already finished this, let's help everyone else out that's still trying to figure theirs out. Jump in the chat. I want you to share what was the actionable goal, just a simple version, and then share what is a controlled metric to help you know if you're in pursuit of that actionable goal. So please just share both so we can really see the difference between each objective. We'll just look for a couple examples to come to the chat on that. I know people are typing it right now. So we're going to wrap this up in about 30 seconds. I'm going to move. And if you haven't already, jump in the chat and just share what's an actionable goal and what's a controlled metric goal. It should be very numbers based, so you know that it's measured. Perfect, Rosangela, that's helpful. Yeah, so you have this, you have to increase the revenue of this one service, and then from there you have to know the number of clients per week or per month. You're trying to figure that out, but that's great. Chris, so you took your 1,400 transactions I saw earlier, you put that into a weekly basis. Even better, more actionable to the 150 client appointments scheduled. And I don't know if that's weak or not, but that's just great example. Those are awesome. And I'm sure there's some more examples coming. I'll let those fly in as you guys wrap them up. For purposes of time, I'm going to keep us moving. So you want to manage this controlled metric plan. So again, simple process. You're going to freeze the set plan that you've built. You're going to duplicate your plan in order to be able to track the actuals as you're going through it through the year. And then you're going to continually problem solve towards those metrics that you've chosen. And again, these metrics you should be comfortable to share as the standard within the company. Again, just adjust and alter, but do not adjust the annual. Keep solving towards it until the bitter end. All right. So let me walk you through some quick hacks, and I'm going to get us all out of here on time. I've got 6 really important hacks that I think about as it pertains to setting up 2020 for success. This is what's in my mind that I know will completely make or break my ability to stay focused and energized. And I could bring a lot of motivational items to get you pumped up, but I find that that only lasts for a couple weeks and it doesn't always continue through the year. So I wanted to think about what are the systems I could give you that I know personally I've learned for myself that has allowed me to stay so focused on the end goal throughout the entire year. One is planning and tracking your time. And I'm sure you've heard this from me on one of these webinars, or you've heard it from your advisor. But please just do it, all of you. Write down now, and you don't have to follow my system. This is my system, all right? Every week I have an hour, every month I have 2 hours additional, and then every quarter I put a 3-hour block to plan out the quarter, the monthly, and the weekly. And I'm always in pursuit of my goals. I'm just looking at these controlled metrics and knowing, are we in pursuit? What do I need to shift to get to that end objective? Works for every stage of the business. So if you haven't done this, but you've heard this, will you please write down whatever system you want to follow? Go into your calendar after this webinar and schedule it out and put it on repeat and just try it. See what that thinking time gives you to get on the business versus in it. 2, make sure you have your leadership systems in place. All right. So many people are figuring out leadership along the way. You really need to have a set structure. So we operate off WHAMs, BAMs, or MAMs. That's weekly accountability meetings, bi-weekly accountability meetings, or monthly accountability meetings. It just depends on the type of role, the type of industry. Choose what you think is best based on the level of their experience as well. I encourage you to have some type of weekly or monthly or quarterly huddle or state of the union with your team. Update your team on how these goals are going at a high level. Don't pinch at them every week, minute, or day. Have a set time where you bring these updates to keep everybody focused on the end goal. And if you have departments and executives, if you're in the higher stages, schedule planning time with them. The planning time I just talked about, make sure you schedule that time with your executives as well to help collaborate and roll up and build the plans together and put them in the calendar, all these things. Fill up that calendar right now for 2020. It will give people structure and confidence of knowing when they're focused on goals, when the accountability will be held, and you will start to see a different performance culture come out as you try to implement the plans that you put in place. My third one is, where possible, potentially look at small shifts in your compensation to incentivize your people on your team for controlled metrics where possible. Connect those dots so it's much more seamless. And hustlers or experimenters, maybe they don't have the employees. Look for ways to incentivize yourself. I used to do this when I ran my own small business. It was just a solopreneur. I used to pay myself more if I achieved different results because that's how the profit actually came in. And I gamified it for myself. So don't just assume this is only for employees. As a solopreneur, you are the only employee. So create that incentive program for yourself as well. The fourth one is, if you have these other initiatives, you all know, right? Oh, we should go change this, or oh, we should go do this as well. Make sure you have an initiatives list, and you're careful on how many initiatives you're working on the business to keep things simple. Make them wait in line. Create a bit of a tracker, right, and a queue per se of where these initiatives get placed, so people know that you're hearing them, and then communicate clearly which few are you working on each quarter with your team. That'll keep them separated from the goals and help them understand that we turn off the initiatives if the goals are not being met. That's a simple way to structure your business to where you're going to keep the focus with your team driving forward. For most stages, it's the power of no. Are you able to say no? You're going to get built a ton of questions. We should do this. We should change this. We should add this. Get good at saying no. Do yourself a favor and keep driving them back to the why and what those end goals are. I'm constantly having to tell myself and coach myself every week that I'm going to have to say no 20 times. Doesn't make me a bad person. Doesn't mean I'm taking away autonomy or opportunities of my people. Even with my clients, if I'm a solopreneur, know the power of no. No. Please make sure you remember that. And then sixth, take advantage of our learning center. You don't need to go build out all these planning documents. Yes, you're going to need to tailor them, but all 6 of these are toolkits. If you log into the learning center at the bottom left, again, you can only see this if you're a client with us, you'll have access to click on toolkits, find these 6. They'll give you a simple template you can use and build off of it. Rob and duplicate. It's how we move much faster through this journey of small business. Don't overcomplicate. And they're built to be very generic and simple, so you can build much more complexity into them between you and your advisor. So keep that in mind when you first open them up. And they do walk through just instructions of how to use them. Don't feel like you have to go build everything on your own. Oh, I missed one. I'm so sorry. Vision planning. So if you're a client with us, which I know majority of you on the call are, go add some of these items to your roadmap. Figure out what was your takeaway from today that you need to bring to your advisor and continue the conversation forward. Or how will you come in really selfishly to our Cultivate Your Success event on the 13th of November to take this to the next level and give yourself some time to plan with these other business owners in a much more micro way. If you are a special guest, I know we have just a select few that we've allowed to come on today. If you're a special guest, we're going to go ahead and launch an opportunity for you to just sign up for a free advising session to learn more about us. That's the only offer I have for you today. But let me give some community announcements to all the clients we have on the call here. One, remember, we're going to launch this Facebook group. It's coming in a week or two. This is us building the hype, all right? When it comes out, we're getting everything set. Please engage. Let's really use this. We have vetted out every business owner community. We know they are doing big things and they are working in the right direction. I encourage you to jump on. You will now have anytime access to get ideas, thoughts, or share some of those awesome wins that you may have along the way as we all support each other as businesses growing within the Cultivate community. Our next CEO webinar, if you're curious, is not till January 15th. I'm actually expecting my first child in about a week and a half. So I'm going to take a break from the end of the year, but I'll be back in January, all right? January 15th. And I'm going to be talking about how to increase your closing rate by 10%. All right, so it's very, very tactical. How do we create that conversion growth by 10%? This is not only good for you, but if you have sales folks on your team, I encourage you to bring your sales folks. They will get a ton of value from this webinar. So I encourage you to check it out if that's something that's interested to you. Final reminder, November 13th, you can log in at cultivateadvisors.com as a client. You can sign up for our Cultivate Your Success workshop. And so we've already just launched an option there, reserve your spot for upcoming events. If you want to click that, we just put that in the portal. That'll take you to my.cultivateadvisors.com where you're able to log in, navigate to the bottom of that screen and sign up for these events. the way that you should be, you can do that for all of our webinars and all of our Cultivate Your Success events. I think we have made it to the end here. So here's what I'd like to ask for. Throw your biggest learning in the chat before you leave. That helps me curate this content. I really appreciate you doing that. So let me know, what did you take away? And feel free to sit back and watch what people write to see if those are things you've learned. And then, as I said, go ahead and click on that opportunity to go sign up for the next event. So that way you can get everything set and you can join us here in the next couple months. Thanks everybody for joining. Let's go make 2020 explosive. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.